All right, what's going on, guys? In today's video, I actually want to talk about why I actually switched from survivor main to killer main. So this is a video that I've actually wanted to make for a while, but with my main channel, Twitch, and then IRL things, it's just kind of been put off to the side, but we're actually going to finally talk about this. So the reason this is interesting is this really isn't gameplay related. Like, it is obviously gameplay related, but it actually is basically entirely because of content. So the reason I wanted to make this video is I just think it's interesting that you guys can hear from the mind of a content creator why they made a big change in their content. So I'm going to list off a lot of reasons. They're not in any particular order. I'm also not going to number them because some of the reasons are kind of just subsections of other reasons. So I'm not going to try to structure this too much. So one of the first things I realized when I actually was making both, because for a while there, I was making like 80% survivor videos, 20% killer videos. I was also playing that amount of percentage for each side. As I was making more videos, I really just felt like killer was so much easier to express your personality on. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And one of the reasons is going to get re-mentioned later, but it's overall just because killer is a lot more controllable. Because when you're survivor, you don't actually dictate the game, the killer dictates the game. The killer chooses who they chase, when they chase, where they chase, their overall map presence, the style of play they do. And as survivor, you're kind of just waiting on the killer to make a decision and then you adjust to that. So with killer, you actually have more overall control of the game. And this makes it a lot easier to actually express your personality because you dictate the pacing of everything. Now, with that being said, it's definitely possible to express yourself on Survivor and to actually have your personality come out and your own styles, but it's just way easier on killer. And if you're someone like me who has just like a lot of personality, killer is just a lot better of a platform to actually show that. So the next thing, which I feel like comes down to basic math, but also comes down to just survivor versus killer and like the nature of the pressure of each side. Survivor is so oversaturated on content. And like I said, part of that is math. If there's one Dead by Daylight game, there is one killer, 4 survivors. If there are a million Dead by Daylight games, there are 1 million killers and 4 million survivors. So mathematically speaking, there is bound to be more survivors, which would mean that there's more survivor content creators. But a big part of that also, especially with streaming, is when you're playing killer, there's a lot more pressure. And I know some people might have different opinions on this, and I don't think I actually fully believe this, that killer is a lot harder than survivor. And like the easy way to go about this is 80% of the time as survivor, you're just doing gens or healing. I'd say survivor's a little harder when it comes to micro things. So, a chase between a killer and a survivor, if a survivor makes a mistake, it is a lot more detrimental than if a killer makes a mistake. Usually kind of depends on the mistake. But with killer, you're kind of always having to be tuned in and you're having to think about all this map control, pressure control, and then there's 4 people to keep track of. You got to keep track of their perks, you got to keep track of their hook states, you got to keep track of where they're resetting. So killer just takes a lot more. And then another kind of side tangent with that is, I'm not trying to like make this killer versus survivor. Like if you're in the comment section, like, oh, cringe killer main or cringe survivor main, just keep that shit out of here. Okay. Like we're all just playing the game, but we all know about the survivor rulebook. And even when I was a survivor, I thought the survivor rulebook was just really stupid. And the reason that the survivor rulebook exists is because of this very basic concept of like storytelling. So in a story, there is a protagonist and an antagonist. Your protagonist is your main character that you're supposed to like. And then your antagonist is the bad guy. Like if you're in a murder movie, the antagonist is the murderer. In Dead by Daylight, the antagonist is the killer. So the reason the survivor rulebook exists, which I know this is like a weird side tangent, but I promise it kind of makes sense when I get to it, is because the killer is the antagonist and people view that as a necessary evil. So it's like, okay, I get that you have to try to kill me, but you got to be nice about it. Like that's why the survivor rulebook exists. It's this weird unconscious understanding of protagonist and antagonist. It's really dumb, but also makes sense on why it unconsciously happens. So building on that, killer is a lot more pressure because you are kind of unconsciously seen as the bad guy because you are the killer. You're trying to kill people. So there's a lot more pressure to perform as killer than survivor, because as survivor, and even when you're playing as survivor, it kind of feels like if you die, it's like, oh, we'll get him next time. But as killer, it's kind of like Lamau killer lost. So because of all that, a lot of people really gravitate more towards survivor because there isn't as much pressure to perform. It's a lot less mentally intensive to play. So if you mess up, people are more likely to just be like, it's okay. Because a big thing as a content creator, like when you're first getting into it, is like willing to look stupid. Like there are times on stream where I just can't get pressure on a lobby. I get like 4 hooks and then they all escape. And I've just gotten to a point where it's like, yeah, it happens. I'm mad at myself for underperforming, but I'm not embarrassed. So I know that long tangent was a long tangent, but I just see that I saw that Survivor was very oversaturated, and I realized why it was. And that's a big thing, is like, okay, I should switch to Killer because there's a lot less Killer creators. So it gives me less competition in that manner, and it'd be easier to grow and just continue my YouTube journey. So this next reason is a pretty massive reason, and this is Killer allows for a lot more content potential. So there's a content meta on DBD, there's a content meta on everything on YouTube, but with DBD, like the meta is insanely strong. And if you don't know what I mean by meta, I mean the best kind of content to make that will pull in the most traffic, which it's not always about the numbers. A lot of it's about passion. Like I enjoy Dead by Daylight to no end when it comes to actually playing the game and making content on the game. Like I actually just completely love this game. But if I'm gonna make a video, I obviously want to make a video that more people want to see for a few reasons. Obviously, would I rather more people watch the video because that means I entertain more people? Yes. If I'm gonna spend a few days on a video, would I rather more people want to watch it than purposely making something that not as many people want to watch? Obviously, yes. And the content meta in Dead by Daylight is builds. Like it's all about build. The builds with perks, the builds with add-ons, the mixture of perks and add-ons. Like if you've been around the DBD content space for 5 minutes, you can see that that is like the supreme content meta and the way to go if you're making content. If you're gonna play, like let's just do an example. If you're gonna do Speedy Vault Nurse, you know, that's its own separate thing. You could use the exact same build on Nemesis, and it's gonna feel a lot different because it's gonna play a lot different. And you could do the same thing with Singularity, and like they're all Speedy Vault, but because they're different killers, they'll have different add-ons, different play styles. It actually like separates itself a bit. Because obviously if you're Survivor and you do, you know, looping build number 45 on Ashley Williams, and then you do looping build number 45, the same looping build on Nancy, how is that different? Like Survivor is just, you know, a skin cosmetic. Different killers have different play styles, different depth to them. So you can use the same thing on different killers and it actually plays differently. And with there being currently 38 killers in the game, there's a lot more content that you can make on the killer side because you have 38 different killers and then however many perks there are. I mean, there's just so many perks and add-ons in this game that gives you so many more combinations than Survivor, which is just good for a longevity of YouTube. So this next thing, it's kind of like a subsection of 2 different things, and that is Survivor content really just blends together. Like all the Survivor content on YouTube doesn't really feel separate from each other. And I don't mean this as any ill will towards other creators. Okay, I'm gonna give like the analytical reasons of that. I'm not trying to throw shade, fire shots, nothing. Part of it is the nature of Survivor, but I mean, it's still possible to show your personality on Survivor. But like I said earlier, Killer allows for more personality expression, and then the fact that there's less content potential means it kind of all just blends together. Because with Survivor, when you're looping a killer, you know, it seems like everyone says the same things and has the same style of commentary, and it all kind of just feels the same. And I didn't want to fall into that trap. I still felt like I was working really hard at separating my personality from just, you know, just the gameplay itself, I should say. Like I said earlier, with Killer, it's just a lot easier to express yourself, and it's a lot easier to not just have you blend in with everybody else. So this next reason isn't a big reason, but I think it's gonna be kind of funny to talk about because people who don't make content probably don't think about this. And if anyone's watching this that has consistently made content on both sides of the game, or just at one point made Survivor content, then flip to Killer, they'll be able to back this up. Survivor compared to Killer sucks to record. Oh my, it is actually so painful to record. Yet again, this is a small reason. This is nowhere near the biggest reason, but it's just worth mentioning. So everyone complains about DBD solo queue. Imagine trying to record funny videos in DBD solo queue. It is just so difficult because yet again, since the killer controls the game, you're at the mercy of the killer. Because there was a lot of times where I was trying to record a survivor video, the killer would chase me for like a minute and then they would just leave and not chase me for the rest of the game. And like, I don't want to sound egotistical, but even as killer, I think like this, they realized I was not going to be the easiest chase in the lobby. So they went and chased someone else. It makes total sense. But if you're trying to record a video, you're not going to get any content and that game just burnt like 15 minutes of your time. And then the amount of times you get left on hook and you had like a good content thing going and then you just get left on hook. There you go, just burnt another 15 minutes. And then if you're going against a killer that's just really good, even if you have a decent chase, it's not a good chase for content because with survivor content, it's really one-dimensional. It's all about juicing the killer. So if a killer is just actually pretty good at the game, you're not going to get any usable footage off of them because you're not going to be able to juice them for 3 minutes, which is exactly like the only dimension of survivor content. So survivor is a lot less controllable. Killer is a lot more controllable. As survivor, you're at the mercy of the killer and your teammates. As killer, it's all about you. Even if the survivors are good, you can still win. I mean, I do have times where I'm trying to run some really stupid build. I forget to bring a sack ward and then I get a boil over squad on Eria Crows. Yeah, that game gets cut, but you know, I don't have to replay as many games as killer as I do on survivor. So it's a very small reason why I switched. And I don't even think it's actually one, like the main reasons I switched were just because like all the content things I mentioned, but once I switched, dude, it was so much easier to record. It still can be difficult to record killer content because if I'm trying to show a build and then I just win the game but don't even get to show build value, I can't really use the game. And this is also a big problem with killer. If I'm trying to show a build or do a challenge or whatever, and someone gives up on hook at 5 gens, yeah, that's kind of a wasted game too. But with survivor, you're just at the mercy of everyone else and it makes it just really difficult to record content. And it's a great thing about switching to killer. I didn't have to worry about that as much. So I actually think I hit all the reasons that I wanted to talk about. And I know that someone might ask like, hey, do you regret switching or are you happy with the switch? And the answer is absolutely. I haven't regretted it once. I feel like I can make way better killer videos than survivor videos. And then once I kind of got comfortable with killer to the point where I can start really just being comfortable with all the killers, I can try goofy techs or just controlling the game easier. Like once I got to the point where I felt comfortable controlling the game of Dead by Daylight, it honestly is so much more fun even getting teabagged at the exit gate than not having to spend the whole game doing gens. Honestly, like, dude, I was so just surprised at how much I enjoyed that because I was like, and you know, I'm willing to switch to killer for content, but I don't know if in my heart I want to. Like, I'll always consider myself a survivor main at heart. And in some part of my heart, I'm still just a goofy little head-on deception addict, okay? I mean, I still have a good little survivor bone in me. That sounds so weird, but you know what I mean, right? There's a deep part of my heart that still just considers myself a survivor main, but externally and like 80% of my heart basically is like, yeah, I'm a killer main now. Like I still play survivor, but I'm a killer guy. I hope you guys found this video interesting because it was kind of from a different perspective. And if you have any questions that I might have missed, like I might have forgotten to kind of mention something, or you might have a question I didn't think about as being a reason why I switched, feel free to ask in the comment section. I'd be happy to answer. But if you're at this point in the video, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and I'll catch you in the next one.